Oh, hello there. You appear to have stumbled upon another episode of the podcast which has no acronym. Um, the handsome voice you're listening to right now comes from the host of the show. My name is Carl. With me, as always, is my equally attractive co-host, Aska. Say hello.
Hello, hello.
How are you today, Aska?
I am good. I am excited to talk about films.
Yeah. However, this time around, we have decided to to do something special. We've brought on our biggest fan, actually. Um, we're a very successful podcast. A lot of people listen to us, but one person in particular really seems to love this show. So we decided to bring him on. Hippo, do you want to say hello?
Hi. Well, thanks for the introduction. I've listened to I think almost every episode of the currently unnamed movie podcast, so I don't know if
Ooh.
that qualifies me for biggest fan, but
I think it does. What's it like being the biggest cum fan alive?
um, it's it's great. I I'm trying to like think of a way to to phrase this that doesn't sound horrible. But yeah, I really I like the work you do.
You really like cum?
Yeah, I think Come's great. I especially really like the casual episodes. I think casual Come is really good.
Yeah. Well, I'm flattered. I couldn't have said it better myself. Actually, cum's great. But yeah, Hippo, do you want to introduce yourself a bit? We've known each other for a while now, but not everyone who's listening might.
Yeah, so I'm Hippo. I am uh, a person on the internet. I don't really like have any like output. I don't make things really right now, other than I very occasionally do visual novel let's plays with a friend of mine, but I haven't uploaded in 3 months because I get really bad at uploading when it's school time. Uh, but other than that, I've known Carl and Oscar for almost 6 years at this point, I
Hmm.
think.
A bit too long, some would say.
Um,
Uh,
yeah, so we met back in anime Twitter days,
the
which
dark ages, some would say.
yeah, I mean, I still watch a decent amount of anime, but like, I feel like it's weird because like I used to watch so much more that like I probably watch more than most people who like are like quote unquote like lapsed anime fans, but like I still feel like I'm very much I feel like I'm out of the zeitgeist at this point. I don't I'm pretty bad at following what like people are talking about, even if I'm watching the shows.
Yeah. I mean, I think we've all, like, moved on a bit from that general way of consuming media,
Mm,
right? We've,
yeah,
like, obviously, Asuka's been moving more towards film. You consume just about anything.
yeah,
And I don't do anything with my life. So, three separate directions.
yeah.
But yeah, you're part of our bi-weekly, not bi-weekly in the same way that this podcast is bi-weekly.
The other
The
bi-weekly.
other
The other
bi-weekly.
bi-weekly. You're part of our bi-weekly movie group watch as well.
Yeah.
So we do watch a lot of the same stuff, and we do talk about a lot of the same stuff as well. So, yeah. But today we've brought you on to talk about a movie called Hairspray.
Yeah, so
Specifically the first version of Hairspray.
yeah.
There's also a 2007 adaptation.
Yeah. So the original Hairspray, the 1988 one, is it's directed by John Waters, who is my favorite director, I would say. Sometimes I sometimes I kind of split my favorite director into like my favorite director is John Waters, but my favorite working director is um, Hirokazu Koreeda, which couldn't be
Hmm.
more different from John Waters because John Waters hasn't made a movie in almost 20 years, I think. Because I don't think you get one funded anymore.
Oh,
His
that's
last
so sad.
couple of movies did not do very well, and especially the last movie he made, I think in 2004, was apparently it was pretty bad, and it also didn't do well critically or commercially. So I think at that point it was like really hard for him to make a movie. Um, but yeah, but this movie was pretty successful when it came out, at least relatively so, considering that the movie he made after this, Crybaby, had a fairly big budget for a John Waters movie. His movie that he made after this had like a $10 million budget, which is like pretty high for this type of movie. But then, and yeah, obviously, so Hairspray was made into a Broadway musical at some point, and then that musical was adapted into the remake in 2007, which I refuse to see because
It has
Okay,
Zac Efron.
but the mom is played by John
I
Travolta.
know that's why I can't. You can't replace Divine. Divine is the best actor of all time, so you
But
can't.
also John Travolta.
No, I can't. I can't do it. The John Travolta as Edna just. I can't do it.
But if I'm not mistaken, didn't Divine pass away like
Yes.
shortly after this one was made?
Yes.
So I feel like John Travolta is like second best.
I don't know. I'll have to watch the movie someday to find out. But
I mean, he's not a drag queen, right? They probably should
yeah,
have gotten another drag queen on, but
yeah. I wonder if he also plays the other role that Divine plays in Hairspray.
I
That's
think,
that's a fun
like,
part.
according to Letterboxd, at least not.
Dang.
did
But
Divine
I
play
don't.
2 roles?
Yeah, because
Yes.
Divine also plays the one of the television executives.
Oh,
Yeah, I think
right.
in the 2007, which I like very shortly read about, it's actually that the blonde mom, who's like one of the antagonists in the new one, played by Michelle Pfeiffer, that she actually takes that role of like the executive,
Huh. That's
right?
interesting.
I mean, musicals often like
Yeah.
mash several characters together.
I mean, there's also no
I
use
feel.
in making a one-to-one adaptation, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Hollywood likes doing that, but it's not the most useful thing.
This movie is definitely an interesting movie in John Waters' filmography. It's his first like mainstream movie because before this he made like underground uh trash movies. I don't like that's not like me being disparaging. I like the movies. That's probably how he would describe them too. His movies before this were like gross out movies a lot of the time. Like probably Pink Flamingos is his most famous one of those.
Mm.
Um it has a famous scene where Divine puts dog shit in his mouth. But yes, that's what he was doing before this movie. And then I don't know how he ended up making like a comedy for like regular audiences, but I'm glad he did because it's one of my favorite movies ever. It's in my top 3.
I think it was actually filmed in Hollywood, Hairspray.
Wow.
So it's not one of the like massive studios, but like not one of the big 5. But I
Yeah.
think it was at least partially like made with Hollywood money.
Yeah.
Maybe it was on cocaine.
Yeah. I mean, it's possible. But yeah, so yeah, I don't. He made this movie, which is about dancing and racism in the 60s. And also lots of hairspray and lots of hair products. This it's about this girl who is pleasantly plump, as she puts it, and she dreams of being on this local dance television show. And she finally does. She basically her dreams come true, but her dreams are kind of well, she decides to use her newfound position of power to try to end racism
Based.
to mixed results. I guess good results, but like not like she doesn't save the world or anything. And yeah, so this is a movie that is one of my dad's favorite movies too. So he's the one who introduced me to John Waters, which I don't know, that's maybe kind of strange. I don't know how many parents do that, but
It
yeah,
explains a lot.
yeah. No, definitely like I think a lot of me can probably be explained by my parents and their taste in media. I mean, um I'm named after 2 directors.
That's pretty based, to be honest.
Yeah.
I don't remember if you guys know my real name.
I know. I can yeah, I know, but I don't know who the 2 directors are.
So I'm named after so I'm half Japanese and half Finnish. So I'm named after Akira Kurosawa and Aki Kaurismäki.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
You're half Finnish?
Yeah.
I never knew.
Pretty nice.
That's almost being half Swedish. That's like being a quarter
Wow. No,
Swedish.
don't tell my dad that. Never say that in front of my dad.
I'm sorry to every Finnish person in the audience.
But yeah, on the Finnish side, I'm like 5th generation removed.
Mm.
Like it was like my grandparents' grandparents who came to America on that side. So like I don't have as much of like the culture.
I love that Americans are like that. Like, oh yeah, I'm from this European country. Yeah, my great grandparents were right.
Yeah.
Well, we as Europeans, we're either half something or we're not. I feel.
Yeah, I'm not.
Yeah, I'm half everything. No, I'm just half German and half Spanish.
Mm.
I'm half average height.
Well, anyways, Hairspray.
Yeah.
Hairspray. She ends racism.
Yeah, she does do that.
Yeah, thank you for the synopsis. Now, the reason we chose this movie to watch is because, if I'm not mistaken, this is actually your favorite movie, Hippo.
It is either my second or third favorite. I have a definitive first in my top 3, but I don't 2 and 3 are nebulous. I don't know which one would go where. Because my favorite movie is Millennium Actress, and then it's either Hairspray or
Okay.
Night is Short, Walk On Girl. And so
Mm.
Hairspray is either 2 or 3.
Well, it's also a movie you chose for our group watch, right?
Yeah. This was, I think, my first Nobu Watch 2 pick.
I think as well. Yes, that checks out. And you
'Cause
always
I
bring us
decided to
the
follow it
like,
up with Shampoo.
which was also a very interesting film.
Yeah.
I mean,
Um,
you have to get the hairspray out somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
sadly, there's no film called Conditioner.
Yeah.
Not yet. Maybe
Not
that's
yet.
when Hippo becomes a
Yeah.
director.
I'll make that
Exactly.
movie.
Exactly.
Complete trilogy.
Spiritual successor to Hairspray and Shampoo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Could you tell us a bit about what makes it your second favorite movie? Or third favorite movie?
um,
Your 2.5 favorite movie?
I don't know. It's just like it's definitely like I mean, probably my favorite genre, especially in movies, is definitely comedy. And so this is probably the movie that I quote the most. Like I'll just randomly like, especially since my dad loves it, and like I showed my brother and he liked it a lot too. So like if I'm at home, I'll just like randomly say a line from Hairspray, and I'll like people. It's just because people will laugh. It's just like one of those things where it's like everything in it is like a good quotable line, and so like it's just like I guess just like the density of the humor. Like pretty much every joke lands for me, and like other than that, I guess just like I like I don't know, like the vibe. I don't know, it's just like fun.
Yeah. I have noticed a theme with the movies you suggest, which is that they
Yeah.
are like, the dialogue is very clever, very funny, very fast paced, and they become very quotable because of that.
Yeah.
It's the same with the one we watched yesterday, A New Leaf.
Yeah.
It's also an old comedy that's very much like, it's got good writers,
Yeah.
witty comebacks, quippy lines, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. It's definitely a tenant of Hippo core.
Yeah, definitely. I've got this image in my head, Hippo, of you as like waking up in a cold sweat every night, uh, resisting the urge to make a tweet where you say, "I was born in the wrong decade."
Yeah. No, I mean definitely my born in the wrong decade is definitely like I feel like because like growing up on the internet, I've experienced a lot of like 2000s like millennial culture, and I'm like, why wasn't I born a decade earlier? Like I wish I was there in 2005 when like people were making these web comics that I obsess over
Yeah,
more so than like the movies from the 80s. But definitely like I do love me some like 70s and 80s Hollywood comedies.
yeah. I mean, it's cool. They got a nice vibe to them. There's definitely an aesthetic, and I think this movie in particular definitely has a strong aesthetic,
Yeah.
if nothing else, right?
Yeah. I mean movies like these would not be shot on film now.
Hmm.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, should we go over some like overall thoughts on the movie? What did you think about it, Asuka?
I was so again. This wasn't a movie I watched for the first time by my choice. It was Hippo's choice to it, and I tried to watch as many of the Nobu Watch films as possible. And John Waters is a name people outside America are maybe familiar with, have probably heard, but mostly in the context of Divine eating dog shit.
Yeah.
Right, and I've got some experience with like cinema of transgression, underground cinema of the 80s in America because I study film. And yeah, I wasn't expecting to like John Waters films.
Mm.
And then Hairspray was surprisingly pleasant, positively pleasant,
Yeah.
as the film would probably put it itself. Yeah, I'd be interested to watch more John Waters, but I also thought he had done more films. Like he hasn't actually done as many like actual films, right? And I should like probably check the ones after Hairspray out sometime.
Yeah.
I mean, you film someone eating dog shit. You can't really. There's not a lot left for you to do in the business.
The follow-up to Hairspray that he made, Crybaby, which is his other like big quote unquote like studio movie, is also a movie that I really love. And it's definitely like, if Hairspray is like definitely much more like like a bit more palatable for like than like his like underground stuff, Crybaby is more like, it's kind of like a fusion where like it's definitely more purposefully like trashy and weird, but like with still some like it's still also like straight. Like his mainstream movies don't have like the gay stuff in it really as much as his like he's gay as like his like underground movies did, but like also Crybaby also stars Johnny Depp, which makes it kind of weirder now, I guess.
A young Johnny Depp is attractive though, very attractive.
Yeah.
And Willem Dafoe is in that
Yeah.
as well.
Willem Dafoe is also in it for one scene, but Willem Dafoe is also really fucking good in that movie.
As always.
Yeah, he's good in every movie.
He's a one-scene wonder in that movie. It's also that Crybaby is a musical originally. It's a musical movie. The songs are pretty good in it. But yeah, definitely like I mean John Morris is definitely like it kind of like Hairspray feels like a John Waters movie, but it's also like definitely an outlier in his career. So it's like, yeah, it's not like it's not completely like his other stuff.
Yeah. But that might also be a reason why this is the movie that's probably found the most commercial success as well, right?
Yeah, probably.
It's more palatable to a wider audience.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's definitely less like it's, I think Hairspray kind of counts as a cult film at this point, but like in a different way than like his other movies, where it's like his other movies were like, here's me and my friends doing fucked up shit.
Yeah.
I have read about Hairspray in the context of being a cult film in an academic paper, so definitely right. That's the only like metric by which we can go, because everything's cult and nothing is.
Every old movie is a cult film.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, but I mean, and that's not to say that this movie is like, it's still insane.
Yeah.
Right. It's still an insane people film. It definitely has a lot of identity to it that from what you're describing feels particular to this director. I mean, he plays a character in the movie who
I love his character in this movie.
who is absolutely nuts, right? Who has these massive props where he tries shock therapy on a girl to try and get her to date white boys.
Yeah.
Like
yeah. One of my favorite images in movies is definitely the roach dress at the end. I was just like, oh, I'm so glad this is where this movie is going.
Yeah. It's very positive in general, right? Like
it
yeah,
feels like in some ways like the entire thing is some sort of drug-induced hallucination because of the sensitive subject matter handled like in sort of a fever dream kind of way. If you get what I mean, right?
Yeah.
Obviously you have this this theme of racism and, you know, black people not being integrated and stuff like that. But at the same time, you also have this world where everyone is into dancing and everyone's wearing a bunch of hairspray and having fun. And yeah, very much feels like almost a child's idea of what a world is in some ways.
yeah, it definitely kind of plays into this kind of like the perception of the past. Like
Mhm.
if I mean it's what this, I think it takes place in 1963, so like definitely like kind of
Yeah.
like the like where it's shifting from like what the imagination of like the 50s is like into like also like the 60s and like yeah, like this kind of like it's not like it definitely like plays on like the kind of like way that like we kind of look at the past as like I don't know, simpler or like cuter.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's actually something I wanted to talk about was like this movie's portrayal of the 60s because while watching this movie, like at the beginning, it's like, oh yeah, this is like nostalgia bait for people who lived in the 60s, right? This is
Mm,
glorification of a previous era. It's not uncommon to see, right?
yeah,
People do it nowadays with the 80s or the 90s as well. Um, but then, you start to see these things slip through the cracks. Because in my head, while I was starting a movie, I'm like, okay, yeah, people do this with like, people will go, oh, I was born in the wrong decade, I was born in the wrong age, and then ignore all the bad parts about that particular time period. Um, but then these things start to slip through the cracks. They'll segregate, say the N word. I'm sitting there like, uh, Hippo racism arc,
wow,
right?
yeah,
I'm like, what is this movie? But then it becomes clear that it's like, no, this is the 60s, um, in an exaggerated way. In this, like we already talked about, this kind of acid trip kind of way, but it's shown not as something purely positive, right? It's
yeah,
it's shown with its flaws, and you see other things as well. The main character is used as unpaid child labor, right?
yeah,
Which is played off as kind of a joke, but it's also fucked up. Um, you see them drop ableist slurs as
yeah,
well. The segregation of special needs children. Um, and the view of darker skinned people as having a lower intelligence and what have you, like
yeah,
it definitely shows the darker sides um of the 60s as well, and society in the 60s.
yeah,
um Even though you have this main character who's like colorblind and saying things like we have a black soul and I
yeah.
wish I had dark skin,
I, I,
which
I
is
quote, I quote that line all the time just to my
yeah,
brother.
um which is definitely interesting. What it reminds me of is there's this like particular brand of horror, which is like everything seems perfectly fine and normal,
Yeah,
maybe even extremely pleasant, right? But then slowly fucked up shit starts to shine through.
yeah,
Like it's old like YouTube scary stuff is also like this oftentimes. Like I don't know if you guys remember "Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared."
yeah,
Hmm.
That's also this kind of everything's fine, everything's great, um, but then it becomes kind of fucked up and scary.
yeah,
And this is the same thing, but like it's racism instead. Like you have
yeah,
this world where it's like, oh, everyone's wearing hairspray, everyone's dancing, everyone's having a good time. Wait, there's segregation. Wait, they're in a stranger's house who's trying to get them to strip naked and smoke weed.
yeah. And I think something that's interesting and kind of fun about the movie is that like it kind of it has all these like themes and things it's saying, but like the tone doesn't really change.
Yeah, that's
Like
what I'm trying to
it's
get
staying
at.
like fun the whole time, but being like, yo, look, this stuff's kind of fucked up.
Yeah. And that, like, I don't know if it's just me, that makes it a bit uncomfortable for
Mm,
me, the juxtaposition, right? And it could be that I'm more sensitive to things like that, but that's why I brought up horror as an example as well,
mm,
because it does kind of make you be like, this is very strange. Like, they're handling these very sensitive and real issues in a constant joking manner, right? Like,
mm.
when people are racist in this movie, the black people laugh at them.
Yeah,
Um,
that's one of my
like,
favorite scenes.
yeah,
I
yeah,
love the scene where the mom's just walking through the
Hmm.
street and like there's
that's
like the like stereotypical jungle music and they're just all like laughing at her.
I wrote down in my notes. I wrote down this is an Always Sunny in Philadelphia scene
Yeah, I
where
just love.
she's in a
Yeah,
normal black neighborhood and she's completely scared out of her mind. And a drunk black man comes out to ask her
Yeah.
if she has any change to spare. She gives him her entire wallet. He takes out a one bill and gives it back and says thank you.
And I love
And
she
she
goes up
runs
to the
away
cop
screaming.
and he's like, what seems to be the problem, ma'am? And he's black. She just freaks out.
Yeah, yeah. It was really funny. I think there's almost like almost exactly the same scene in Always Sunny as well,
Yeah.
where they're like,
Yeah, there's an episode where
where they get addicted to crack, right?
yeah.
And they're in a black neighborhood. And there's a they don't know how to get back home, and they need to ask someone for directions. And there's a black man wearing a suit and tie, and a hat. It looks really upstanding. And they're like, "Oh, thank God, we can ask him." But instead, they go to like a white drug addict junkie sitting
Yeah.
behind him and get mugged. Yeah, this is the same vibe.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I wouldn't be surprised if the Sunny gang, who the writers like, have seen this movie or
Yeah, yeah,
movies from around
definitely.
like this vibe.
I mean, I think like what probably also sets it apart from what little I know about Sunny. I think like what's interesting about the comedy in this film is that the baseline is very serious, and I feel like the humor is all added onto, right? So it's this serious story about segregation and stuff, but there's a layer of comedy above it, and they did never take off that blanket, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm.
that makes it not insensitive because they're like not as much making jokes about minorities and stuff.
I mean, yeah,
It's
certainly the jokes
Yeah,
about racism
yeah,
mostly.
yeah. It's just like everything's just kind of like joking above this story, which works in my opinion really well.
yeah, definitely. Like, this is a movie that, like, nowadays, I don't think a white person could make this movie.
No,
Uh, but that has more to do, I think, with the use of language that they're employing and stuff like
Mm.
that. I think the overall messaging that this movie has, uh, like you say, Aska, it never is racist itself, right?
yeah.
It's
I mean,
always shown that people who are racist are that way
there's
without
obviously
any real
some
basis.
notions of like white savior stuff in there, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah,
like,
definitely.
it doesn't take itself so seriously, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's also
I,
like because this was made in the 80s, right?
yeah.
Um, the average person back then wasn't as educated on
Yeah,
social justice matters as we are nowadays, right?
yeah.
Um, John Waters wanted to make a sicko film. Uh, I respect that, right?
I do love that because Tracy is like, obviously presented as this very socially conscious person who really cares about these matters, right?
Mm.
And
Mm,
then she still uses ableist slurs,
Yeah.
right?
yeah,
Which is like nowadays, that wouldn't work because it's all mashed together, but it works as like an 80s film where it
yeah,
shows that she's socially conscious, but that it doesn't mean she's
Specific
perfect.
cases.
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
It's also very possible that like the director himself, like that whole ableism thing hadn't caught on yet in
Yeah, exactly.
society.
Yeah.
Like, uh, uh, it was at the point where people were like, "Yeah, racism is bad," but um, not ableism, right? Not
Yeah.
Yeah.
homophobia or whatever. But I think in many ways this movie is a lot less racist even than things made in like the ungodly 2010s era, right?
Yeah,
Like
definitely.
we recently watched 21 Jump Street, Aska,
Yeah.
and that's a fine movie. Like it's fairly like unproblematic in ways, but you still had like in that wave of movies, you like black people were always stereotyped into one particular kind of role in those movies, right?
Hmm.
Mm.
Um, people would use yeah, like in general, like there was a caricature more than this movie has, where it just portrays them as normal people who like have their own set of culture, which is accurate. Black
Yeah.
dancing is different historically than white dancing, stuff like that. Um, that's not to say this movie isn't problematic in some ways, but by
It's
the
like,
standards of the 80s,
yeah, I think the thing is that if you're really sensitive, you're not gonna like this film.
yeah,
Mm.
But that doesn't mean that the film is like quote unquote problematic. Like if you're really sensitive as a viewer, that's fine, right? This
Yeah,
film isn't
exactly.
made for you, but the film is not offensive. It's just not super sensitive.
Yeah, like like watching this, I get uncomfortable hearing the N word used that like in that way, right?
Mm.
I get uncomfortable hearing people talk about, having a specific week dedicated to what they call N words, right?
Yeah.
But that's how things were, right? It's an accurate representation, and it's not like glorifying. It's not like saying this is fine. Actually, it's like look at this absurdity of how people behaved, and isn't it
Yeah.
fucked up? And
Yeah.
isn't it great that we have a main character who's staunchly against that? And I was like, the whole movie, I was waiting for her to be like, oh, she's gonna sell out her friends. She's gonna sell out her morals to climb the social ladder, right? Never happened.
Yeah.
That's definitely what you'd expect from a newer Hollywood film, yeah.
Yeah. Like during the audition scene, they were like, "Would you bathe in a segregated pool?" I was expecting it to be like a close up of her looking at the black girl, and then looking at the gang that she could
Mm.
join, and she'd be
Yeah.
like, "No, never," XYC ugly racist rhetoric.
Mm.
But no, she's like, "No, I'm for segregation. I'm
She's
for
against segregation.
I'm for integration. Yeah, I'm for segregation of the racists from the goods. No, but like she's a progressive, and she stays progressive throughout the film.
Yep.
I
Um,
think
yeah,
it's definitely something that I think I enjoy with the movies that like it definitely like about that it is kind of like tongue in cheek. Like it's like there's like in terms of like the like I guess like the white saviorism. Like I think like a good scene for it is definitely the scene where she and Link are making out and like the whole like I wish I was dark skinned and it's like even if we're white our souls are black and it's like
yeah,
it's like these kids aren't like they're not like perfect
yeah. Like the kids,
saviors.
they're
Like they
they're
don't like,
idiots.
yeah,
Yeah.
they have their own misguided ideas of race too.
Yeah, because what they mean is like, oh, black culture is fun
Yeah,
because
Mm.
they dance fun.
yeah,
But they don't mean like, oh, I want people to be racist and segregate me, right?
yeah,
It's the kind of idiot take you would see a 14-year-old have on Twitter.
Yep.
yeah. The characters are not like particularly like social politically aware or anything.
Yeah, and they're also not portrayed as infallible either.
Yeah,
Like there are moral failings to all these characters. Like the parents of the main character are like, you know, uh Divine like says she'll work an extra day for free just so she can get some clothes. Like
yeah,
these aren't good people necessarily. They have good qualities to them, but yeah, the 60s were kind of fucked up.
yeah. Um, but yeah, I think definitely like yeah, I really love the characters in this movie. I my dad will always just say that I'm trying to iron line. Because he's a big Divine fan, so
I mean, Divine does kill it.
yeah.
Mm.
And then yeah, I mean, I think, and also I guess something I noticed rewatching it. I watched it Tuesday night, I think, to prepare for this. And this was my fourth time watching the movie. Was
Yeah.
just like how brisk it felt. Like it felt like very fast. Like it didn't like. I was like, oh, we're at this scene already. We're at this scene already. Like constantly. Like there's not like it. I don't know. Like it felt very. Like I feel like sometimes if I'm rewatching something, I'm like since I know where everything
Mm.
is, I'll just be like waiting for things to happen. But I was just like, I kept the momentum kept up, and I was just like, oh, I'm at this great scene now. And
Yeah.
so
Things definitely do happen all the time in this one. It doesn't waste any time really.
yeah,
Uh, which I guess, like, yeah, I would be interested to see more from this director because it feels like he definitely has a unique kind of style to it.
yeah, I think probably I would say his other movies are maybe not as like tightly paced as this one, because especially like some of his earlier movies definitely have like a and then this happens and then this happens kind of thing, where it's just like, here's a bunch of material with these characters.
Yeah.
And definitely his older movies have a lot more like long takes, where it's like, here's a scene where it's just like the scene goes and goes and goes.
Okay.
There's something interesting about like American underground directors in that nobody knows film as pop culture as well as them, right? Like how film works to convey what you want. I think that's just something that you always see in the American underground and avant-garde. And I felt that was in this film as well, because it obviously parodies like the 60s in a way. It
Yeah.
portrays the 60s. It also very much portrays Hollywood before New Hollywood, I think, before the blockbuster started, right? Before Spielberg, before Coppola, before Star Wars, before everything.
Yeah.
And I felt that a lot during the film. I thought it felt a lot like it was made to look even more like it was filmed on set, right? We have all these like very specific spaces. Obviously, half of the film is actually filmed on a set for the TV show.
Yeah.
And yeah, just this idea of like we're portraying this as like 60s Hollywood, but it's an 80s film, obviously. And that just made it feel very nice, because it doesn't feel like a blockbuster. It isn't a blockbuster, obviously. There's no spectacle, but it was very nice. I liked that a lot.
Yeah, it's nice. I think nice is a good word for it. I liked a lot of the characters. I thought the main character, she was fun. Like I said, I was constantly expecting her to like throw away her morals, or for someone to do it, because that's such a common trope. But no, like I like her. I like that her conventionally attractive boyfriend also was a good guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that the main character is plus size. That feels progressive for the time.
And that she's like positive about it, right?
Yeah, and she's positive about it, and like her mom's on her about like going on a diet, but her dad's like, no, it's fine, right?
My favorite character is probably her friend. Penny Pringleton is positively permanently punished.
I love that.
I
All the
love the
alliterations.
Scarlet Letter shirt that she has.
And also like the small like characterizations, like in the very first scene, there's like, you know, you get the girls watching the dancing show.
Yeah.
And they see the cute boy and they're like, oh, he's so dreamy, what have you. And then they see the girl who we'll later find out is really mean, who's like hanging out with the boy.
Yeah.
And simply based on that, they'll go, oh, she's such a whore, right? She's such a skank. Which is like, yeah, that's that's charming in a way. This teenage
like,
jealousy
it feels
thing.
real.
Yeah. Like I've seen it happen in real life, right? Like myself, I can be like, oh, I hate this person because he is attractive, right? I hate this person because he's successful, whatever. And then like hoping they have some sort of moral failing, which this girl ends up having, but she could have been nice.
One of my favorite just like small bits is when like once Amber's jealous of Tracy and like she's just spreading rumors, she just like gives this girl like the note and just opens it, just says she's adopted.
She's adopted. Yeah, I love that. Big ass letters for the camera as well. She's got roaches in her hair. She's adopted. Yeah, she gets sent to special ed, where they have a teacher who's like a taskmaster.
I love the teacher for special ed when they do the volleyball match then, and she goes wild.
Yeah. I love that the teachers are portrayed primarily as being kind of shit. Because they probably were in the 60s.
Yeah.
Like the teacher is also laughing at the special ed kids, right? It's disgusting behavior. And yeah, overall, like I really like how this movie doesn't try to glorify a period of history which had some great moral failings. In favor of like aesthetic. Like it has it both ways and it kind of works. Oh. Do we have any other topics we thought were interesting that we want to talk about?
I don't know. I feel like I definitely have. I mean, I have other things I think about this movie, but I don't know if I have anything that like I've like can succinctly put into words right now.
Yeah. I mean, like, a lot of this movie comes down to identity, and I think
Mm.
that's what we've been talking about a lot, right?
mm,
It has a certain visual identity, it has a certain um, uniqueness to um, like the overall tone of it, right? We've talked about how it's this happy movie that still has some serious themes to it. Some, um, it's got racism.
yeah,
It's got kids almost being like taken advantage of by strange adults. It's got a completely psychotic mother who tries to send her daughter to, uh, you know, psychologist who will teach her to not like black men, right?
yeah,
It's a lot,
Mm.
is what it is.
I do like want to talk a bit about the nuance as well because Connie Collins, the host of the Connie Collins show,
yeah,
right? I really liked how he was portrayed because he always talks back at the producer and like tries to get like
Yeah,
people integrated,
yeah,
but he's not willing to sacrifice his job for it,
yeah,
and
yeah,
not in a like diminishing way. Not that he actually believes in what he's trying to do. Just there is that nuance that not he's not portrayed as a bad person. It's accepted that he has that hindrance and cannot overcome it.
yeah,
And
and I think that's an accurate
yeah,
portrayal of how it was for a lot of people back then, right?
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
because obviously, like, it's your livelihood, right? It's your
mm,
career. And at the end of the film, where integration is like becomes a thing, he's like ecstatic,
yeah,
right? Um, yeah, it's nice to see a nice person in charge, even though he wasn't prepared to give up his entire career for it. He definitely held a strong belief in what was right, and he tried to work his way around the system.
mm,
I do like the portrayal as well of uh the piece of shit executives.
mm,
Like everyone who played a bad guy in this movie did a really good
mm,
job.
yeah,
Uh, the parents of the mean girl as
yeah. I
well.
love her hair.
Yeah,
So
and the,
crazy.
the fucking cartoon ticking time bomb.
Yeah.
Yeah. When the hair flew up, I thought it was her head first, and I was like, "Oh, it doesn't surprise me with this movie."
I love the scene where Amber's just in the tiny car going
mm.
around and like everybody's so sad.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Uh, when they handcuff themselves to the governor,
yeah.
um, and just annoy him until he agrees. Um, yeah, I like that there's a guy called Seaweed.
Yeah.
That's pretty fucked up. I also love that they have an entire prolonged conversation during a dodgeball game.
Yeah. Dodgeball's my brother's favorite scene in the movie.
It's a good scene. Uh, there's a lot to like in this one. There's a lot that sticks with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Should we move on to some closing thoughts then?
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. So I guess I'll start. Um, Overall, I thought this movie was pleasant and a nice watch. I think on a rewatch, um, I would be able to like view it from another lens, and I would definitely
Mm,
put it up some notches for me. I think I've put it at like 2.5 so far.
yeah.
That's because like it was hard for me to kind of get the vibe of it until maybe
Mm,
halfway. And yeah, it is a strange movie. It's unique, and I can definitely respect it for that. Uh, like everything we've been saying for the last 45 minutes obviously applies. It's nice to see the 60s portrayed in this way. It's nice to see, serious topics handled in this way with like not only new ones but also like clear like uh satire or caricature of the people who hold these beliefs. You're never shown any kind of both sidesing, right?
yeah.
It's nice to see a movie like be like, no, this is just fucked up, right?
Yeah.
Even in the 80s when definitely a lot of people still held racist beliefs. I mean, they still do nowadays in
Yeah.
the year of our Lord 2022, right? Yeah, I had a nice time with it. It's a lot of things.
Definitely.
Yeah. Hippo, do you want to go next?
Sure. I mean, yeah, I think just like it. Yeah, it's just like a really nice blend of like the like weird, like I guess like the like way other John Waters movies are like the weird kind of like outsider stuff with like being like a pastiche of like retro and like mainstream culture, I guess. Like I think it blends those two concepts that honestly, like if I had watched a bunch of John Waters movies that weren't Hairspray before Hairspray, I don't think I would have believed that Hairspray would have worked if he described it to me. I'd be like, how would he make that movie? But like
Yeah,
it
I
it
don't
just
trust this guy
works.
to do racism, right?
Mm, yeah, but it's just like I don't know. It's a movie that like every time I watch, I'm just like, damn, this still hits. Every joke's great. Almost every joke. The one thing I noticed this time that I hadn't noticed before was that um Penny's mom is named Prudence, like she's a prude. And I was just like, oh my god. But yeah, one of my favorite movies. I definitely recommend it.
Yeah. Aska, what did you think about the movie overall?
Yeah, I think like in the context of our podcast as well, this being the third episode where we actually talk about a singular movie, it's the most like yeah, just purely pleasant film, right? Like
Yeah.
we've talked about it. There is some nuanced display of like racism and the times and stuff. I would not put it next to like Do the Right Thing, right? Like I wouldn't recommend it for political messaging.
Yeah.
Mm,
I mean,
Uh,
it's hard to say a movie is like the premier anti-racism movie
yeah,
when it's not even made by a black person,
yeah.
right?
yeah,
In general, like I think its appeal is much more in the like fun, pleasant, right? It's
yeah,
a Hollywood film in that way that you're not supposed to think too hard about what it means and stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like about like what the people thought or what they wanted to express with that. It's just a nice parody of like the '60s, and there's some. It's a fun movie about like racism that feels good. It's very fun to watch right before in the context of the podcast when we talked about Suspiria. That's obviously a very more artsy kind of film. Drunk Angel, we had like a bit of the mix. And now with this one, we go stronger into the Hollywood direction, which is good because we want to cover all bases somehow, right?
Yeah.
Definitely recommendable if you're just looking for a good time.
Yeah. Yeah. And obviously, I would also recommend it. I think it's one of the more unique films I've seen.
mm,
But yeah, so that was Hairspray, the 1988, right?
yeah.
Mhm.
1988 version of Hairspray, the one that doesn't have Zac Efron. um, thank you so much for listening to us. Um, thank you so much for joining us, Hippo.
No
It was
problem.
great having you on. We had some really nice bands, I think.
Mm,
And if you ever want to come on in the future, go ahead.
that'd be cool.
Is there anything you want to plug before we end this off?
I guess not. I don't really have anything to plug. Follow me on Twitter, I guess.
Yeah, follow him on Twitter. All our socials will be in the info, as always. Um, yeah, Oscar, you have anything to add?
Nope. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.